Welcome to the Free Birth Podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
Today on the show, we have the incredible Patrice from New Jersey. This interview is truly one for the books. Patrice walked into her first birth experience at 20 years old, feeling confident in her body and in her ability to have a normal, unmedicated birth. She was quickly silenced and given pitocin without her consent or knowledge. Patrice was forced to stay in bed in excruciating pain for 30-plus hours, denying the epidural, laying there suffering. Somehow deep within her, Patrice knew this wasn't right and that this wasn't her body's fault, and left there knowing she would never go back to the hospital. She then went on to have 2 midwife-assisted births, and then finally, with her 4th and then 5th, had family-centered, free home births. We also can't help but get into an in-depth conversation about midwifery regulation, eating placentas, and the questionable ethics of doulas.
It's so weird because I came from a family that didn't talk about birth very much. It wasn't that it was like a taboo subject. It was just something that just wasn't discussed. I knew that I was born by cesarean and that my mom, she says that she did not see me for 3 days because whatever the anesthesia was that they gave her, it wasn't an epidural, but whatever it was, it knocked her out. So she didn't even wake up until like 3 days later and all. And so, for me, it just never occurred to me that my body was broken, that something was wrong, and that I would need anything whatsoever. But, you know, me and my baby and my body and all, it just didn't occur to me. And so I thought I was going to walk my happy self into the hospital and they were going to follow the birth plan that they asked me for, and I gave it to them. And basically the plan was just, I didn't want any drugs. I was afraid of drugs, which again is odd. I'm like the anomaly in my family because like no one is like me and all with all this natural stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it never occurred to me not to be a more natural-minded person. Even as a child, I did not like to take medicine. And if I could get away with it, I would dump it and tell my mom, yes, I took it. And I don't know, I just always had this, I guess it was a fear, honestly. And with regards to birth, I felt like I don't want to have to pay years down the line for whatever you decide to do with me on this one day. I can take whatever my body is going to bring me. I know my body and I trust it. And I feel like, you know, I was born a woman, so I can do this. You know, that's the only woman I don't believe in as far as birth is concerned is the one that was born a man. So, like, that's, like, the requirement for me, you know, as far as believing in a woman's body and her ability to do this. And so I just thought they were going to, you know, respect what I wanted.
Oh, what a crazy notion, right?
I know.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I wish someone had told me. And you know, interestingly enough, there was a foreshadowing that happened just before I went to go and go for the, what is it called? When you go to the hospital, I think the hospital tour, I believe it was. I was going out the door and I see the mail come in and my mom had the slot and all in the door. And I saw the mail and it said something about a freestanding birth center. And I looked at it and I was like, that looks really cool and interesting. And then I literally paused and then I said, maybe next time, and walked out the door and went to this hospital tour.
Wow.
And at the end of the tour, I remember looking at the nurse or whoever it was that gave us the tour, and she said, "You have any questions?" And I was like, "No, but I'll see you next week." And sure enough, next week I was back in there, and I just knew that, I was going to give birth. And thankfully, I was not induced. I was augmented against my knowledge and consent, of course.
Wait, what do you mean? So they just started pitocin and didn't tell you?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yep. So my labor in the hospital, it was horrendous. It was in total, I'm surprised they didn't give me a cesarean. This was 1998, though. I don't know. But it was like 33 and a half hours. And they would not allow me to get out of that bed at all. Like, once I got in the bed, that was it. I was like done. And so there was no going to the bathroom to pee or anything like that. And because,
oh my God.
because they had given me pitocin, I didn't even, it was just like, I don't know if I was in shock or what, but I literally said nothing, did nothing. I was just like, I didn't make any noise, nothing. I was just kind of just there. And just like ebbing and flowing as well as I could,
And let me ask you something real quick, because I think a lot of women experience what you just said, the not being able to get out of the bed. And I personally know many hospitals in Los Angeles who have this practice. But I think it's hard for a woman who doesn't have any exposure to it to understand what that even could look like, because before that experience, that sounds insane. Like, nobody's going to tell me I can't get out of a bed if I need to pee.
Absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, we know it happened to you, and it happens to many women, that they come out of their birth saying, I wasn't allowed to get out of the bed. So can you just speak to that really quickly of how they enforced that?
So honestly, I believe because they gave me pitocin and I had no idea that they were doing that, the pain was so debilitating that I just laid there. I had, like, literally, it was as if they took my voice and all, and because it was so hard, because as we know, contractions are made to be harder, stronger, and longer with pitocin on the scene. And it was absolutely ridiculous. I've never experienced pain like that ever again, and I've given birth 4 more times. And it was just really bad, and I didn't even realize that I had not gotten up to pee. I do not remember ever feeling like I had to, and it was just that all of a sudden the next day the nurse came in and said, "Oh," she kept calling me this baby. She kept, "Oh, yo, the baby, this baby is, this baby is that." And I'm like, who is she talking to? And so she comes in and she says, "Oh my gosh, this baby hasn't gone to the bathroom." And so she catheterized me, and they said I filled up like several containers.
Oh, I bet.
And that is when actually the labor progressed too. And it was just absolutely insane. And then they kept asking me if I wanted to go ahead and get an epidural because I was in so much pain. And I just looked at them and I'm just like, no. And I couldn't even, I just couldn't do anything. There was no screaming. There was no moaning.
That's paralyzing.
Yes, it was very much so.
So at what point did you realize you were on pitocin?
I didn't. I had no idea. And in fact, I did not know until I think after I had my second child.
What?
That's when, yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that.
Wait. Hold on. But how did you find out?
Looking at records and all.
Oh,
because,
my gosh.
Yeah, I had no idea. I just knew that it was just like the worst thing ever. But I also instinctively knew that it wasn't because of my body. Like, my body did not betray me that day. It was all that they did. I knew that. somehow, even though I literally knew nothing about birth. And it was such that, oh my gosh, my doctor was the worst as well. It was, I never had, I think he was just like an on-call doctor. And so it was this African guy. He comes in and he's just really rough. And I remember, so my daughter, this was when it got, well, it's not fun, but so I'm trying to, they're telling me it's time to push, because I didn't even feel the sensation to push. I never felt it. And so they're like, okay, you're complete now, you need to push. And so I'm thinking, okay, let me sit up, and just instinctively. Sure. And so I try to sit up, and they push me back down, and they're, you know, coaching, and they're like, okay, come on, push. And somebody's counting to 10. And so I'm trying to sit up, they push me back down, and I'm trying to push all the while. And then somebody's counting to 10, and everybody's screaming, push, push, push.
And you don't have an epidural?
No.
Crazy.
No, I never got one. So the
so you just laid in bed on pitocin.
Yep.
Girl.
Yep. Yeah. And so I was trying to sit up. They kept pushing me back down, and I'm trying to push, and they're counting to 10. And I did take Lamaze, and I remembered in Lamaze, it's funny the things that stick out to you. In Lamaze, they told me that it's not safe to push past the count of 10, because then the baby would lose oxygen and, you know, all that. And so I had that in my mind for whatever reason that came to mind. And so I'm like, okay, don't push past 10. And it got to a point where my daughter's head, because they kept pushing me back down, her head was playing peekaboo. And so that was happening, and I kept trying to sit up. They pushed me back, and then they're like, okay, we're going to have to go past 10. And I wouldn't go past 10 for a while. And they're like, you're going to have to go past 10 and all. And so eventually I was like, okay, forget it. I'm going to go past 10. So I go past 10. Oh, no, she needs oxygen.
Oh,
so they put the oxygen mask on. And then the doctor decides that enough is enough. I'm going to just go ahead and give me the vacuum extractor. And so he puts that on the baby's head and yanks her out of me. And in the process, of course, he rips me a new one. And then when he went to numb me, he says, I'm going to give you a needle now and to numb the area so that I can stitch you up, because you've torn pretty badly. And I'm like, okay. I haven't felt the effects of that needle yet. Like, I never, in fact, I remember fussing with him. I said, I'm still feeling this. And he would start to stitch, and then he would say, oh, okay, well, let me try again. I don't know how many times he stuck me. I swear it had to have been at least 10 times, if not way more. And again, I never got numb. And after a while, after, you know, maybe that 10th time or whatever, I said, you know what, forget it, just do it. And I felt every single stitch. And it was such that when they gave me the baby, they hand me my daughter, and I'm just looking at her like, all right.
Totally.
I handed her away. And it was just, I don't know, it was ridiculous. And the doctor did not even do a good job stitching me up, because weeks later, I remember I'm back home with my baby, and I'm at my mom's house, because I was in college in Florida, went home to D.C. to have the baby, and then went back to college once school started back up. And so this is a matter of like 3 months. You know, I had the baby in May, and then went back to school in August. And so I remember telling my mom, like, Mom, come into the bathroom, because something smells funny. And then I grabbed a mirror, and I was like, look at this. And she's like, no, I've seen enough of your butt. I don't want to see anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think something is weird. Something is wrong. He left skin hanging out of me, Emily.
Ew.
It was just like,
just a quality doctor.
Yes. And so I had to go back to my doctor, and they did some kind of, I forget what it's called. I want to say liquid nitrogen. I don't know. They did some kind of thing where it was a shot, and they burned it off. And of course, you know, that was fun. And so
brutal,
that
man.
that was my first experience, and there was no help with breastfeeding, nothing. It was ridiculous.
Oh, first of all, I'm really sorry you had that experience. It's as horrific and violent as that is, it is also one of the most common birth stories I hear.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that, I mean, this blows my mind literally every day, how violent, how normal violent birth has become.
Yeah.
Well, one positive thing out of that, I mean, there's many obviously to come, but that you somehow could know instinctively that this wasn't birth, that this was stuff happening to you. You know, I think that's not every woman walks away with that kind of understanding that, you know, wasn't broken in you, thankfully.
Right.
So how did you feel afterwards? Were you angry? Like, what was your processing experience afterwards?
Honestly, I don't think I really had time to process the birth so much in that beginning part of my daughter's life, because I was focused on trying to get breastfeeding down pat. I in the hospital, they did not help me. The lactation consultant came, but she didn't help me. She literally grabbed my breast, stuffed it in the baby's mouth, said nothing. And I had inverted nipples, and so I knew nothing about any of that and how to help with that. But I was determined that I was going to breastfeed my daughter, and so I don't know how I did that today when I look back, because I had cracked and bleeding nipples and all, but we eventually got it, and my daughter breastfed until she self-weaned at about 18 months or so. But
awesome.
Yeah, it was just like such an insane experience. But I just knew that after that experience, I honestly, I don't believe I started to heal from that until somewhere around after I had my third birth. Around that time, you know.
So what was the timeline between your first baby and your second?
They're 5 years apart.
Okay, so that you had a minute.
Yeah.
So was your second birth a free birth?
So no, that one was, I've had like all the births. So so the second one was at a freestanding birth center, because again, by then I had graduated college, my husband and my husband was just starting his work as an air traffic controller, and we had moved back to my home in DC. And we were with my mom at the time, when I had my second daughter, because I wanted to have a home birth. I was determined that I was not going back to the hospital ever again, unless there was an emergency. And by then I had done a little bit of research, and I knew, about midwives and all. And so I remember telling my mom and my husband that I wanted them to be there when the midwife came for an interview for the home birth. And my mom was like, "In whose home?" And I say, "In our home." And she's like, "I don't want the mess associated with birth in my home." And I said, I'm the one giving birth to this baby. You're not going to dictate to me, how I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to the hospital. And so in the end, because my mom freaked out and my husband, he read off of, what she was going through, and he started to freak out, the compromise was a freestanding birth center. And thankfully, the birth center was like 7 minutes away and all, so it was pretty perfect. And that was my introductory into the world of midwifery. And it was, frankly, absolutely amazing. And that experience was that was a turning point for me. And I ended up having my baby it was funny because on the 4th of July, I went into labor around 2:40 or so in the morning. And I remember sitting in my mom's house near her, like in between her room and the bathroom. And I was just doing whatever I needed to do, going to the bathroom. I got in the tub at some point. And I'm just going through the motions, doing whatever I need to do. And my mom, at some point, she looks at me because she stayed up, and she said, I think you need to call the midwife. And I was like, why? The labor isn't even hard yet. And she said, Patrice, your contractions are like 2 minutes apart. And I was like,
you're like, but this doesn't feel like the last birth.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, but it doesn't hurt. It's, I'm fine.
Right, because at this point, you still have no idea that torturous labor was from pitocin.
Exactly.
That is a head trip.
I was looking for that pain. I was expecting that kind of pain. And I could have totally had my free birth if I was like, But I'm like,
well, and I'll just say real quick, like, that is one of the huge reasons why I'm doing this podcast, because my prayer, my deep, deep, deep prayer is that women can find normal birth without having a first violent birth. And without having, hopefully that if one woman can hear your story and say, no, I'm not doing that.
Exactly. Learn from my mistakes.
Totally. And of course, and I hesitate to even say they're mistakes because you didn't know, you had no idea. True. Really, it's just very sad. And of course, such beautiful triumph and victory came from, moving past that first experience. But it just breaks my heart how many women have to learn that way, and hopefully by hearing your story and all these other women sharing their stories, we can bypass that first step of trauma.
Yeah. And so the birth, oh my gosh, I don't know, that her birth, this is my second daughter, it holds, like, it was so dear to me because for the most part, it was very much a free kind of birth because of, there was nobody telling me what to do or anything. And I didn't even realize I was in active labor at all. And when I called the midwife, and she said, okay, call me when, she said, okay, meet me at the birth center, I think. And so this was, at this point, it was about, I got to the birth center at 5 a.m. And I remember I didn't even bother to wake my husband up for the labor, any part of the labor, or my daughter, because my husband, through my first labor, he slept. And I remember he woke up at times when we were in the hospital, and he would come over to me, and he's like, breathe. And I'm like, get away from me. Don't talk to me.
I'm obviously breathing.
Right. And so I was like, you're useless. I don't need you. So I didn't even bother to wake anybody up to tell them I was in labor or anything. My mom had just stayed up anyway. And so she knew. But when it was time to go to the birth center, I go and I woke up my husband and my daughter, and I'm like, and my cousin was there. And I said, come on, it's time to go. And they're all like, what? And also we got to the birth center at 5 a.m. and I ended up having the baby at 5:18.
Oh my gosh.
And 9:45 a.m. we were back home.
Wow.
And July 4th, ready to celebrate, and people came over and we had fireworks. It was great.
Aww.
And the birth though was just, I was struck by how simple and how just drastically different it was, because most of the time from me stepping inside the place at 5 a.m., I only know that because I looked at the clock. But at 5 a.m. when I got there, my mom jokes and says that most of the time was spent from me trying to get to the back room where I was to give birth, because I could feel the baby's head coming out. And she says I was like walking like a monkey.
Well, that's the thing with a second birth.
Yeah.
A second vaginal birth is like, okay, not always, but very, very, very typically they go so fast that to put them in a car and have them have to transport anywhere, hospital, birth center, is so, it's so counterproductive.
It is. And I remember scaring my husband too, because you talk about precipitous labor, my goodness. My husband, I'm telling him on the ride there, it was only 7 minutes, but I said, this baby's head is coming out. And he was like, no. And he was just freaking out. But it was wonderful, because usually they have 2 midwives, but only one made it because I was so quick. And it was wonderful because by the time I made it to the room, my mom says that I snatched off my underwear as if it was Velcro, and I laid on the bed. And all I remember was the midwife. Well, two things I remember. I remember laying on the bed, and I was on my side because that just felt best. And I remember having a really strong contraction, and at that moment, somehow my mom says that they were trying to hold my 5-year-old back, and I don't know what that was about. But they, because I had already prepped her, she had been to every appointment, all that. But she broke free of them and got on the bed with me, and she leaned over my head, and we were like looking at each other eye to eye. She touched my head. The moment she touched my head, Emily, I was in the height of a contraction, but all of the pain was gone.
Aww.
And it was just like the pressure of, that contraction. And I was like, oh my God, how do I maximize on this? But right after that, the midwife just looked at me and she said, whenever you're ready. And then I pushed my baby out. And that
Beautiful.
was it. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
Wow. You must have been over the moon compared to that first birth.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Beautiful. So then what happens next? I mean, you kind of already have the obvious, what's it called? Like stepping stones put down to move, is your third the first free birth?
Nope.
So only the fourth.
The fourth and the fifth.
And the fifth, right.
Births. Yes. So the midwife who helped me with my second daughter, she looked at me as I was about to leave the birth center, and she hugged me and she said, next time, have your babies at home. And I said, I will. And so
you were like, I just got to get out of my mom's house.
Exactly. And
you could go outside.
Yeah. And so we did move shortly after that. We moved to New Jersey and in our own home and all, obviously. And at that point, I got pregnant and I said, okay, this is my home birth. I don't care what anybody says. This is my house and this is what's going to happen. And my husband did try me one time, and interestingly enough, I knew nothing about free birth at that time. I don't know where this came from, but it was something that I found a midwife, and I'm talking to her, and she's trying to help me to figure out what insurance will help cover the birth. And my husband said to me, if you don't find an insurance plan that will cover this birth, you're going to go to the hospital. And I looked at him and I said, if I don't find an insurance plan to cover this birth, you better read up on unassisted birth. And he was like, what?
Well, wait, so was he present at your first birth?
Yes, all of them. Yep.
I mean, how could he have ever thought you're going back there? Come on.
Exactly. And the interesting thing, though, today, he and my mom are the biggest cheerleaders for free birth. Like, I mean, my husband tells every woman that he knows that is pregnant, he's like, okay, here's the game with the hospital thing. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. I mean, he's talking to people about circumcision. Before you go and decide to do that, look at this video. And he's showing them like Penn and Teller's show and just all this information and all. And so,
well, and I love that, you having that response of, if we don't find an insurance plan, then I'm doing this on my own. It's like you didn't need to hear about free birth. I mean, free birth, the ultimately is the most natural, obvious, for forever, for millennia, for as long as the hundreds of thousands of generations that we have, the baby's coming. No matter where you are, you're going to give birth. And I love that it's, we just really overcomplicate things in our head, and it's really just so simple.
Yeah. So with this one, the whole time, so I'm with this midwife, and I liked her well enough, but the very first interview that I had with her, I said to her, my second daughter was born in Nepal because no one tampered with anything at all. will you try to break my water if it doesn't break on its own? And she said no. And so that was something that like just stuck with me and all. And fast forward to my labor, she gives me what was it? Castor oil. She did she manually opened me some.
The stripping.
Yep. She yeah, see, I'm so in the practice of not saying any technical terms anymore because the people around me are like, what? But sure. so yeah, she stripped my membranes. She gave me castor oil and vodka. And
were you like at 42 weeks or something? Why the rush?
I've only my first free birth was 40 weeks exactly to the day. And all, but yeah, no one else. All of my girls everybody's born earlier, and all 39 weeks or just before 39 weeks.
That is so annoying.
So yeah, yep.
So there's not even a somewhat reason for it. Not that there is ever a reason for it.
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
And so she did those things and did not explain anything to me at all. Now, to back up a little bit, I had a little bit of an education at this point, like a tiny bit, because after my birth at the birth center, before we moved away, my midwives came to me one day and asked me to become a doula with their program that they were starting up. And I'm like, well, what is that? And so I ended up I did one birth with them, and it was in the hospital. And I had to hold a woman as she got an epidural. And I was like, I can't do this. And so, but that stuck in my head and all. And then, so with my birth, it ended up okay, but she did break my water. And very recently, in fact, my husband described to me, what she used to break my water and all, which was, what they use. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was like, I felt totally violated and all. And again, and it was at that point that I'm like, and that was a water birth and in my living room. And thank God, nothing happened as far as me having to be transferred or anything like that with the castor oil and the vodka. And I was very tired and miserable and all, but it worked out in the end. But after that, I ended up writing a book about my 3 birth experiences up to that point. And then I went gung-ho into the doula world and all. And then I studied midwifery with Ancient Art Midwifery Institute. And then after that, I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want anybody at my birth. And my husband, again, he did freak out a little bit. And he's like, well, can we just have a midwife, in the driveway? And I'm like, no, I don't need her, And so.
Did he eventually get down with it, or was he always nervous until it happened?
I think he was just nervous until it happened because, frankly, it was such that he was supposed to. No, I told him, I said, you'll have an opportunity to catch your baby. And he was like, oh, no, I can't do that. And he's, freaking out and all. But I, talked to him throughout my whole pregnancy. And because I did everything myself. I didn't go to anybody at all for the last 2 pregnancies. In fact, I didn't even take a pregnancy test. I just woke up, knew I was pregnant, and was.
Yeah, you'll find out sooner or later. I mean,
exactly.
I guess maybe if you're somebody who, drinks alcohol and smokes cigarettes or something like that, who wasn't consciously, trying to get pregnant, then a test might make sense. But I agree. I was hoping, this is my first pregnancy, and I was hoping that I wasn't going to take one. And I was so surprised because I'm doing an unassisted pregnancy and birth, you know, and I was so surprised by what a head trip it was. Yeah. And, obviously you you had already been pregnant multiple times, and so you had some reference point probably for what it felt like, which I did not. And I wanted so bad to not take a test, and I felt like I was going a little crazy. And I think it's true. I think I did know that I was, but I was I think I was afraid to think I was if I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, because I really wanted to be. And
I understand.
So then I took one, and I felt so bad doing it. And I was actually, my husband, knows me very well. And he was like, Emily, just relax. You're going to do an unassisted pregnancy. You don't need to go this hardcore. Like, just take a stupid test. And I was like, but I'm using the technocratic model. and I was like, I'm looking outside myself to validate my life. And he was like, oh my God, chill out. But it was actually, for me, it wound up being, I put the test, it was obviously positive, and I put it on my kitchen counter. And for about a week or two, I walked by it 20 to 30 times a day, and just to be like, am I still pregnant? And kept looking at it. But I do hope in the future, now that I feel a deeper relationship to it, that I will also have be in the same boat.
It will happen. Definitely. It's just amazing. In fact, with my fifth son, I'm remembering that I did take a test and it was negative.
Oh, wow.
And I did not take another test once I realized that actually that negative test was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I only took that test to prove that I was not pregnant, because I had 5 consecutive miscarriages over a 9-month time span.
Whoa.
And we were not trying to get pregnant. We were just kind of whatevering,
Mm-hmm. And wait, that was between which babies? Which number babies?
Between the 4th and the 5th. This was so I had my son in March. My last miscarriage was the June prior to that.
Wow.
I mean, no, sorry, not June. I got pregnant with him in June. It was April 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So all of your miscarriages happened between the 4 and 5?
Right. No, 5 of them happened between 4 and 5. One happened before the 3rd. Definitely one happened before the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 happened in between.
Wow. So... Yeah. Okay, well, I guess we'll get to that. We'll keep going in order. So we have the 3rd, and now we're not doing people anymore. I got this.
Yep.
So then you get pregnant with your 4th, and you didn't see anybody for your prenatal care?
Nope. No one at all, except my chiropractor, actually. Nice. I went to my chiropractor every single week. And then, several times a week as needed. And that was it, because my chiropractor is another one that's like into, the whole home birth and all that. And so
did you tell your community your intentions to birth without a provider?
Yeah.
How did that go? Dare I ask?
People were like, "Oh, that's so dangerous. Oh, are you sure you want to do this? Something might happen. What if an emergency happens?" And I'm like, "Well, there's this place called the hospital, and I know where it is."
Yeah, there's these three numbers called 911.
Yeah. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like." It's insane, but it was an opportunity to help educate so many people.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even tell people that I was pregnant that wouldn't have known, because they didn't see me and all, until I was probably around 6 or 7 months by the time I went on and it was like out publicly that I was pregnant and all, because I just didn't want to hear anybody's nonsense and all. But of course, that was still enough time to hear it.
Oh, yeah.
But
and so tell me about your first free birth.
It was nice. I thought I was going to have another water birth. Well, no, I didn't actually. I wanted to labor in the water. That's what I wanted, because with my second daughter, I wanted to be able to get into they had a really nice tub at the birthing center, and I wanted to get in it, but I just didn't make it. I didn't have time. And so I said, you know what? I want to experience labor in the birthing pool because with my third, she was born in the water, but I literally got in the water just in time to have her. And so I didn't experience it. And so with this one, I was like, I'm going to experience this. It's going to be great and all. And so I just labored, and it was the whole labor was less than 4 hours. And no, it wasn't. My third daughter was less than 4 hours. My son was actually around 6.5 hours. And so I was like, what is up with this? But I was in the water, that I was in the water way too long and all. And so I was in the water, and then eventually I realized I needed to use the bathroom. And once I got out of the tub and went to the bathroom, my husband tried to help me to get back in the pool, but I said, no, I don't want to do that anymore. And I laid on the couch for a while, and I remember them laughing at me because I had my leg up, way up in the air. I'm very flexible. And I had my leg up, and I was like, you know what? Can you just take this off for me? And he was like, wait, take what off? I'm like, the leg. Just take it off, and I'm going to, go ahead, because I can feel the baby about to come. Just take that off. And he was like, you're not like a Barbie doll where I could just like take your leg off and put
You're
it
like,
back.
can a girl just fantasize?
Yeah, I'm like, and so I remember I said, you know what? I want to go to my bed. I'm going upstairs. So I start walking up the stairs, and I remember pausing through a contraction on this staircase, and I remember feeling oh my gosh, it was like I was high. And I remember saying, is this what being high feels like? Because I had never gotten high before. And I'm just like, this is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm just standing on the stairs, like in this euphoric mode. And then I went on upstairs, and I remember I'm not one to curse, right? And so we go upstairs, and all throughout my labor, it's just me, my husband, our children, and I had two friends here, and one on a video camera and one on a regular camera. And when we went upstairs, throughout the labor, I'm telling my husband to do certain things, like get in certain positions to support me. And he would say, oh, my back. And so
suck it up, buddy.
Girl, yes. We got upstairs to the bed, and I said, you know what? I want you to just like lay in this certain position, and I'm going to lean on you. And he was like, my back. And I said, I don't give a fuck about your back. He was just like, and everybody just cracked up laughing, including him. He gets so tickled if I curse.
Oh, I bet.
I don't. And so he's just like, oh my gosh. And so.
Mama means business.
Exactly. And so it was so cool because with this one, I ended up having him do like a bit of a hip press for me. And I was on, not all fours, because my oldest daughter was in front of me she's on her knees, and I'm like in front of her on my knees. And then I just kind of stuck my butt out, and I'm like leaning on her. She's supporting me from the front. She was initially going to catch the baby because my husband was too chicken. And then in the moment, though, because my husband was in that position and my daughter was in the position that she was in, he just stepped up to the challenge. It was no longer a fear. He was just like, oh, it just became natural to him.
Were all your other children around?
Yes. Everybody was there. And they were all nodding off at times, except my oldest. She was very much present the whole thing. But once the baby's head started to crown, I said nothing to them and all, and because I'm just like, they'll see and all. And so, because I had my butt up in the air anyway, and so I said, I'm just like laying there, or like kind of not hands and knees, but my butt is up in the air, and my friend, she's like, oh, because she sees the baby's head. And so everybody's just all around, and my husband's there, and I was determined to not push because I had learned that you don't have to push. And so that was amazing because I was so accustomed to, after giving birth, feeling like every time I would go to the bathroom, everything is going to fall out of me, including my heart and all.
Yeah.
That wasn't present after this birth or my last birth and all, because I did not push. I just allowed my body and baby to do the work of, birth. And it was amazing. And my son came out very slowly. And interestingly enough, I still it was fine. It was totally fine. I moaned my way through it and, and all. And I remember feeling my husband, once the head came out, my husband says, okay, so do I just pull? And I was like, don't touch, and all. And my friends are like, no, don't pull and all. And so my son is like inching out, and then we had 3 girls, mind you. So this was like a big deal that this was now a boy, and I knew it was a boy and all.
You could just feel it.
Yeah, I just knew. Yeah, and so once my son was almost all the way out, my husband was supporting his head, and I was like, "You touching? Don't touch!" And he was like, "No, I'm just holding his head or whatever." And then my son started to do what we call like the dolphin thing, where he started wiggling his little stuff, and I was like, "No, don't touch!" And he was like, "That's not me, that's the baby." And I was like, "Oh, I guess I can't do anything about that," And so he came on out, and my husband caught him, and it was wonderful. And my husband is such a fool. He says that I scarred him with the placenta. He says that I got up on the bed like some raving lunatic, and I with one hand on the cord screamed, "Ah!" and just pulled it out. And I'm like, no, I didn't.
Even if you did, back off.
Yeah, right. He's just nuts. That didn't even happen though. But it was one cool thing that happened with that birth. By then I was encapsulating placentas, doing doula work and all that. And so my daughter had encapsulated she was going to encapsulate it for me, but I told her to make me a smoothie with it. And I was like, don't tell me if you don't wash off the blood, or if you wash off, don't tell me anything. Just do it. And I'm going to try this. And I'm going to be gangster about this.
Totally.
Because I felt like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, because I'm a pescatarian. I only eat fish. I don't know about all this meat and all. And so
fish is way grosser than placenta.
I know, right? I know. And so she brings up the placenta smoothie to me, and when she brings it up to me, she's like, "Here you go." My husband intercepts. My husband is greedy, so he always takes my food. And so intercepts. Yes. And he took it, and he's like, "Oh, this is good."
Hold on. Did he know that it was placenta?
Not yet.
Oh my God. That's what he gets.
Yes, exactly. And so he's like, "Oh, this is so good." And so I just looked at him, and he should have known something was up, because I didn't fight him to try to give me my placenta. My smoothie. I didn't do any of that. And I'm just watching him. I said, "So is it good?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's really good." And I said, "Do you know what the secret ingredient is in that?" And he was like, "It tastes like," and he's like, naming all these fruits. And I'm like, "Yeah, but the secret ingredient." And I hollered downstairs, and I said, "Jayla, tell your dad what the secret ingredient in this smoothie is." And she was like, "Placenta." And he was like, "No, it's not. No, it's not." And I was like, "Yes, it is." And then he was like, "What? You guys have me eating placenta?" And my friend
You're
said,
like, "No, you actually took it."
Exactly. And my girlfriend, she was like, "Shut up. You just said it was good," and all.
That is hysterical. I've never heard of that. I've seen dads willingly try it because they were curious, but not that. That is very funny.
And you know what's weird? Every single placenta that I have encapsulated, if he is home and he smells it steaming, he's like, "Oh my God, that smells so good. I want to eat somebody's."
No. Okay, for anybody who hasn't smelled steamed placenta, it is disgusting. It is not. I'm not a meat eater either, so maybe that has something to do with it. But it is smoothies don't smell at all. Raw placenta doesn't smell, but a steamed placenta that is cooling on the counter,
Yep.
it is not good. I've had to, when I used to do it, I would open up all my windows in my kitchen because of how gross the smell was.
Yeah.
And I had to stop doing that because the neighborhood cats would come around the house and they would jump up on the ledge and just salivate.
Oh my goodness. Yes, and that's what was happening with him. And I would tell him, listen, when I have a baby, you can have some.
Totally.
But then he's like, oh no, that's gross.
Oh,
like, oh my God.
Very inconsistent.
Yes, ridiculous. But meanwhile, my oldest and my youngest girls, both of those two, they both had placenta, both the two births that I had and all, they both had some. Nice. And they loved it. In fact, my youngest girl, after this last birth, she comes up to me and she's like, Mommy, can I have some of the steamed placenta? Yeah, you can have some. And then she comes back, can I have another piece? And I said, yeah, go ahead.
Wait. Is she just eating it like as is?
She said she put salt on it.
Oh my gosh.
She put her sea salt on there and
it's like it. It's kind of like a liver.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's what it,
Like what it looks like. I've never tried it cooked, although I did have at a birth one time. I had been with this woman for a couple of her births, and she had really cool midwives, and she was just like a down chick. She was super cool. And the midwife prepared the raw placenta still warm out of her body. Like it must have been 20 minutes postpartum or so. Yeah. She prepared it as carpaccio. So it was like raw slivers with soy sauce and garlic and onions. Oh, wow. And then actually the mom kind of passed it around and gave everyone a piece. Yeah. And I figured, why not? You only live once. And I took a piece, and I haven't eaten any sort of meat since I was 15 or something. And I got really high from it.
Really?
Just one piece. And I don't know, maybe it was, I'm sure I was high from the birth because it was an amazing birth, and high from even the idea of doing it. Because it's kind of weird, and it's like somebody else's, which is totally weird. But I remember driving home feeling like I was on drugs. I felt my whole body felt like it was vibrating.
Wow. Oh, that is so cool. Oh my gosh. And you know what? I have a friend because my daughter ended up encapsulating my placenta both times. And a friend of mine, she had me make her a tincture with it. And so she has it, like to this day, she has it. And I thought she was joking during my pregnancy. She was like, you're growing such a wonderful placenta for us.
For our community.
Yeah, but she was dead serious.
It's funny. Like a community little shop.
Yep.
Okay, so that was your fourth.
Yep.
Amazing family experience all around.
Yes.
And your husband drank your placenta smoothie. That's amazing. Yes. And your first son.
Yep.
Which is so special. And so then you have, at some point, a year of many losses, it sounds like.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was really just insane, the experience that I had. And it was, at the same time, I have to say it was kind of, I want to say wonderful, actually, in that I, for the first time in my life, did not feel like I was alone. And I felt very much loved and protected and nurtured. And it was beautiful. It was just like astounding and all.
Nurtured by your family and community, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, and just, And I had, I don't know, it was just, I felt so like encapsulated and all. And at the same time, there were people who were concerned too, because they felt that I should go to the hospital. I should go get checked out and see what was wrong, because surely this isn't good or normal, and all. But I really, so I do like I'm like prophetic and all, and I hear from God and all that. And I felt very strongly that I was not to to go to like any specialists or anything like that. And actually, I spent some of that time like angry and fussing and all with God about the whole thing, because I'm like, why do you keep letting this happen and everything? And then I remember one day changing out my son's drawer, like the seasons had changed and all. And so I'm changing out his drawer and I hear, you will have a son. You will have another son. And I was like, stop saying that. I don't want to hear that right now. Because I had lost maybe my 4th child in a row at that time. And I was like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that right now. And then eventually I said, all right, you said, like, this is days later. I said, you said that I was going to have a son. What's his name? You name him. And then I didn't hear anything. Then a few days later, all of a sudden I hear the name Jonathan. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that name before, because my husband, everybody is J's in here except me. And I was like, oh, let me look up Jonathan and see what it means. Girl, that name means Yahweh has given. I was like, oh. And I just cried. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I wrote the name down and all that. And then I went on to have another loss on April the 15th. And I remember because I recently saw in my journal on the 21st, I wrote, why would God give me the name Jonathan if there's no Jonathan coming? And that June, I had just attended a birth of my girlfriend. And then I was angry because I felt like I was about to get pregnant. And I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I don't want to, I just don't want to deal with this. And so it was such that I was just like visibly shaken and all. And I know what it was, because I'm like remembering everything.
Sure.
So it was like it was a Thursday. The Tuesday before that, 2 days before, I heard, you're pregnant again. And I was like, I don't hear you. And I just kept on going about my day. And then that Thursday, as we were leaving out to go to a rehearsal or something, I said, you know what? I could just take a test. I forgot about tests. I could take a test and know definitively, whatever, and keep it moving. And then as I was going to the store to get the test, I was like starting to really freak out. And my daughters were all like, Mommy, what is wrong? And I was like trying to fake like everything was okay. At first I was like, nothing. And then they go with me to the store and I'm trying to hide that I'm getting a pregnancy test. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you getting this for? And I was like, I just want to take a test because I feel like, God said that I was pregnant again. And I want to take a test and prove them wrong and just keep it moving. And so I ended up on the way to the where we were going. I told all my girls, I said, listen, I'm really upset right now. And like, I'm upset to the point where I can't even pray for myself. So you guys need to pray for me. Start right now as we're driving. And so each of them took turns praying for me. And by the time the last one finished praying, I was like, I don't know, I felt this like emboldening in my spirit where I was just like, you know what? I am going to have a baby. I am to have another son. And I'm not going to be fearful my entire pregnancy.
Right.
I will not be robbed of having a wonderful experience. And this fear, you got to go right now. And I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to fear this whole thing. And so when I got to where we was going, I went in the bathroom and my youngest went in there with me, my youngest girl, and obviously my son too. And I took the pregnancy test and it said negative. And I was like, yes, I'm not pregnant. I'm not pregnant. My daughter, oh my gosh, she would have been, I guess 9. She said, I can't believe you. I don't understand. She said, first of all, I don't know why you're taking this test and you are pregnant and all. And she was like, I can't believe you would be so excited because we're going to have another baby. And I was just like, I'm so sorry, Jasmine. I'm sorry. It's okay.
She was like, I need my brother, Jonathan.
Oh man, she was mad. She was so mad at me.
Oh my gosh.
I threw the test away and I was just like, yes, I'm not pregnant. I don't have to think about this for another month. Yay. And Tuesday morning, it was like July 4th, my middle girl's birthday. And I remember I shot up out the bed and I said, oh no, I'm pregnant. I am pregnant. And I never took a pregnancy test again to confirm it. And, and I just was.
You just knew.
And, yeah.
And did you have any sort of intuition that pregnancy would stay? Did it feel different, or was it the same, kind of understandable, like worry in the beginning?
Yeah. You know what? With this one, I really think I kicked that fear's butt, because because all of the other pregnancies, I would know that I was pregnant. And some of those, I took tests for those too. And so, I would show my husband the pregnancy test and all, because, sometimes I would take it because I said to him, I feel like I'm pregnant. Do you need to see a test? And he would say, yeah, just go ahead and take the test. And I would show him the test and it was positive. And then I would go on to lose the baby. But all those pregnancies, Emily, I would go to the bathroom expecting to see blood. Every single time I would go to the bathroom, I would wipe and I would look at the tissue, inspecting, and I was totally expecting to lose every one of them. And so I expected,
Yeah.
I was totally feeding into, that fear.
Yeah.
And it was awful, And so, interestingly enough, this last one with Jonathan, I never looked for blood. I never had any kind of fear whatsoever. And it was fine. Everything was fine.
Well, and I love you taking charge of yourself, that fear is just so consuming. And it's so, when you're in a state of fear, it almost can seem logical, like this self-protective, thing that when you can break out of it and say, no, I'm not going to let this drown me. I'm going to turn to my faith or my trust or, what will be. And exactly. to live every day or every pregnancy, or to wipe every time you go to the bathroom expecting for something terrible to happen is just no way to bring our babies in.
Right.
It's it's completely understandable. It's of course, but what what a cool example of you making this choice to say, no, I'm not going to let fear run this, and then your baby stayed. Right,
and because just like you said, this fear, it wasn't a protective fear. It wasn't like I was in danger of a bear coming to maul me in a moment. It wasn't productive at all. So at some point, I was like, well, listen, no. If this is going to happen, I'm certainly not going to, just go through a whole entire pregnancy begrudgingly and afraid and just, that's stupid. So I'm like, no.
Yeah. Gosh, it's such a big distinction. I mean, some people live their whole lives that way of just every day is worry. And I think it's a huge distinction that gets made in the birth world. A hospital, I think, is a really good place for you to birth if you are completely overcome by fear. And if you are so worried about every little thing, that's okay. Some people are there. And I think that's a, though I might argue falsely reassuring, but it is to some degree a good place if every little thing is going to worry you, because those are people who would benefit from just giving their agency over and letting things just happen. You know? And I think it gets painted in the free birth world that people who free birth are fearless. And I always try to point out that's not the case. It's just that fear isn't dictating the decision.
Yes. And actually, I have told many people, actually, the fear for me is the system.
Totally.
I'm afraid of that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of paying for this, because seriously, my daughter right now, she's 19 now, the crown of her head is very sensitive. Like, she does not allow anybody to do her hair as far as going to salons and all. She does not, because it's still that's what I did not want. I didn't want to pay, for that one day, hello, she's 19. That's stupid, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it definitely affects us our whole life.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
go ahead.
oh yeah, just so bring me to Jonathan. You got to tell me.
Yeah, so oh my gosh,
And this was only 6 months ago.
Yes, his labor was fun. It was probably, let me see, I went into labor maybe about 1 something, and I had him around 4:30ish in the morning.
You just sneezed.
Yeah, and it was so fun, and because I was heading into I was in active labor, and I chose to sit on my bed and watch a video that was funny to me. It was like a spoof of some guy singing a song that the guys really could sing, but the spoof was that they had somebody do a voiceover, and they totally sounded awful, and it was just hilarious and all to me. So I'm in labor, laying on the bed, and I'm laughing. And of course, the mechanics of laughing is, doing something and all. And I'm like, oh, wait. And I'm trying to like,
oh my gosh.
I'm like laughing and trying to tell my body, wait a minute. And all. And it was just like, and then that made it more hilarious. So I'm just like having a ball, and everybody's laughing at me as I'm laughing and trying to deal with the contraction that I'm having at that moment and all. And eventually everybody went to sleep except me, of course. And then I ended up getting into the birth pool, and it was funny because I'm sitting there in the birth pool, and I was like, oh man, I've never pooped before in labor, but I think I'm about to now. And so they're like, it's okay. No, my oldest is like, it's okay. And so, but it wasn't poop and all. You know how that is. You think it, and you don't. But so I
love your little doula daughters.
I know, right? Yeah, and it's, oh my gosh, what's so fun is they taught me how to listen with the fetoscope, because I could not for the life of me, with my first son, I couldn't hear him. And with my daughter, I couldn't hear her either. But my oldest and my middle girl, they could hear. And my oldest learned how to palpate when she was 9.
Oh my gosh.
It was just amazing. Like she's the one who told me that my third daughter was head down. She's like, oh, the baby has turned now. And I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh.
When I went to the midwife checked, and she's like, yeah, the baby's head down.
I mean, actually, that's a really good point, that this is not rocket science.
Yes, exactly.
It's pretty simple stuff at the end of the day.
Yes, and when people ask me, I love when people ask, so who cut the umbilical cord? And I'm like, oh, the baby. And they're like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, says my oldest cut her sister's umbilical cord, that sister cut her sister's, that sister cut her brother's, the brother cut his brother. And, and that's how we do. And
so awesome.
Yeah.
And what a gift of renormalizing your family into birth after the rest of your family, as you said at the top of the show, was, you were a surgical birth, and it's not necessarily the norm at all to talk about birth or be acquainted with it or have normal birth experience. And here your family is completely changing and taking it back.
Yeah, and my girls, I ended up doing a vlog, I want to say 20-something weeks, maybe 25, 26 weeks in my pregnancy until the birth and all, and I interviewed my girls during 3 separate videos, and each of them, I was so surprised, each of them, well, I don't know why I was surprised, but each of them said they were not even considering going anywhere to have their babies and all. They said that they all say now that they want me there, but I'm like, you may not in that moment, and if you don't, that's fine and all. But they're not going anywhere near a hospital.
Yeah,
because they're like, no.
You're raising them right.
yeah. But it was so funny because so I'm in the pool and I could feel that my son was coming, and I reached down to touch, and I've never done anything like that before, but this time I was like, I want to see if I could feel his head. And so I feel, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can feel his head. I'm thinking this. I'm like, oh, I can feel his head. And I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. That's a nose. These are lips. What the heck? He's coming out face first.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, okay. And I'm bracing myself because I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt. I've never felt the ring of fire before until this kid comes out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because we all have like big heads and all. And this baby does not have a big head, but he had to come out face first to make up for it.
Wow.
So he comes out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt everything. But it was just still so, I don't know, like I'm just smiling and like, it was so powerful and so just wonderful and everyday but extraordinary, you know? And I just, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And after he came out, and in fact, we thought that I might be having twins. I'm remembering now. I don't know how I could have forgotten that. We thought that I might have been having twins.
You forgot because it wasn't true.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember after he came out face first, and he came out swimming. I have to show you the videos. I'll send you them. But he came out like, and he's like doing his arms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because he was still part way in, and I'm like, stop, like, you know. And so when he came out, my daughter is feeling my belly for the next baby, and I'm like, nope, there is no other baby. And she's like, Mommy, it's gonna be okay, you can do this. And everybody's like, you can do this, Trees, you can do it. And I'm like, no, if there's another baby, we're gonna have to come back tomorrow. I cannot do this now. And I'm like fussing but thankfully it wasn't another one and all.
But you knew that it wasn't really.
No, I seriously, this time, so many things happened where I would feel it was weird. I don't know how my son was, it was like he was an octopus or something, because I'm serious, because it was just the way he was positioned was weird. And like, so many of us could have sworn we felt two heads, two butts, backs, everything. It was just weird. And listening to his heartbeat, I finally got to hear a heartbeat. And we would all, like, you would hear like da 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 da, and then it would be da 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 da, and I'm like, what? Like, it went into double time. And so your birth is amazing. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
birth
right.
Is just like, yeah,
it is the great mystery.
Yes.
But then only one placenta came out, and nothing else ever came out.
Oh my gosh! And the placenta.
You're like 6 months later. I'm still waiting for that second.
I know, right? Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Sorry. What about the placenta?
The placenta was beautiful. It was. I had done the Dr. Brewer's pregnancy diet. And oh my word, it was wonderful. Like, this placenta was so healthy. In fact, it was almost 2 pounds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the baby was 7 pounds 4 ounces. So it wasn't even like he was like,
huge,
a 10-pounder or anything. Yep.
Just a wiggler.
Yeah. Yeah.
How special.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wonderful.
And so now, are you in the birth world? Like, are you still attending births, or?
So I like to say no, but then someone all the time will come along and make a liar out of that. So I'll just go ahead and say yes. And
unofficially.
And the fact is, I do like consultations and all with many people all the time. And the reason I like to say no, honestly, is because I just felt so scarred and all, because oh my gosh, the system, even out of hospital births have been absolutely ridiculous, like insane and all. And like, I felt like I was in the twilight zone at so many births, no matter where they were, and just so many awful experiences. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And my husband, I remember him saying after I came home from one birth, he was like, I think you need to go and see somebody. Yeah. You need help and all. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm coming away just
traumatized.
And the thing is, I'm very good at being careful when I'm at the birth, so I'm not gonna show that I'm horrified
Of
or
course.
anything like that, because you don't want to bring your stuff. That's not the place, for that. And it's
I know, but even that, like upon reflection, because I stopped attending births about a year ago, and upon reflection, I've actually been having some ethical dilemmas internally about how much I've hid how horrified I was. Because really, maybe I should have been horrified externally. I mean, at that point, we all know how it goes. At that point, it's like, you just got to help that woman get through it, and it's just survival. And of course, it's not going to be productive to freak out, and you got to save that, for the car when you get home. And but I agree. I mean, I have experienced so much secondary trauma, and in taking a year away from it, I feel like I've gotten to digest it on a whole nother level. That when you're going to 5 to 10 births a month.
Right.
You can't digest it in the way that it needs. And, this is a whole nother conversation, but I basically got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? I cannot accept money to then go in and basically enable a system in participating, especially under this illusion that I'm somehow going to help increase her agency and minimize abuse. And I don't. It's me against a system. I'm not able to stop that.
Exactly.
So I stopped. I knew before I got pregnant that I needed to stop attending abusive births, which, like you just said, it extends beyond the hospital. I first started to stop hospitals, and then I just kept seeing abuse with regulated midwives, and I was like, okay, I'm not doing that either. So where does that leave me? And that's how I came into free birth, is I was like, well, shit, what else do I have?
Yeah, exactly.
What other way is there? Okay, I guess I could help women do this on their own, and then it led me into this whole amazing community.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I got to help one woman, and I was her doula, and she ended up, well, we called it a bootleg free birth because I was there. But her midwife ended up dropping her labor.
Why? For what reason?
Oh my gosh, girl. So it was a planned home birth that the midwife turned into a hospital birth, and it was really crazy how she got her to go to the hospital in labor, and then the woman left the hospital, AMA, and she did not follow her. She told her, I'm done.
This was a licensed midwife?
Yes, of course.
I mean, that's the thing, right? They have to protect themselves, and when it's why I wish more people understood how dangerous licensed midwifery is. Yes,
because you're serving that licensure. You're not serving women and babies. You can't.
And maybe it would be one thing if the licensing allowed for more autonomy of practice, like how an OB has. An OB has a tremendous amount of autonomy in his or her practice. The state trusts a doctor to make their own decisions of safety and what they're comfortable with, and that is not the case for midwives.
That's cool.
And it's part of the downside to that is it's part of the reason why the breech and VBAC bans can be allowed to happen, because if the state says ultimately we trust doctors more than moms, which we know is true, and we trust doctors to make calls on safety, and if they are uncomfortable with XYZ, let's say a VBAC is a great example. The reason they're uncomfortable with it is cultural. It's not evidence-based. It's not that vaginal birth after cesarean is actually dangerous, as we know. It's that culturally, there's no freaking incentive for them not to have a second, a subsequent C-section. And so the state actually says, we trust a doctor to make that call of safety, even though what we realize is those calls of safety are not based in evidence, they're based in culture, which is it's just so amazing, because the witch hunt of midwifery and the the false sense of progress that regulated midwifery has made has limited women's choices to a whole nother level. And you know, we're not talking about it enough.
Yes. People are oblivious. And, you know, I think part of it, too, is that, frankly, not very many people want to take responsibility.
No, of course not. What would that look like?
Yeah.
Well, and, you know, to be fair, like, it's hard to be willing to take responsibility for something that you have been brainwashed against your entire life.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for us because we have done the work to get out of that brainwashing.
Right.
And so we see the light, you know, we know the truth. But for the majority of people who are very much still under the propaganda, you know, that obstetrics and gynecology has successfully, you know, put into our, you know, the threads of our culture, the weaving, you know, of our culture, that of course no one wants to take responsibility for something that has been trained into them is inherently dangerous and could be death at any moment, and that they're afraid of.
Yeah.
Which, of course, again, is super hypocritical because we get into cars with our families every day.
Exactly.
You know, I was talking about safety the other day with a person who was kind of challenging the notion that birth is safe. And I was like, look, when you eat, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be able to swallow your food. And maybe once in your life you're going to choke, or the guy next to you is going to choke, but you do not approach your meal, you know, worried about how you're going to digest it or if you're going to choke. You don't approach your bowel movement like that. Someone somewhere is having rectal bleeding and needs to go to the hospital. You know, somewhere someone is choking on their food or whatever, but that is not the norm for us. And if we, you know, no one's claiming, even, I mean, the whole conversation of safety is a joke anyway, because nothing's safe. And
it is, exactly. It's just insane the way they compartmentalize this area like this. And it's just, it's so frustrating. And it's so sad to see women walk themselves right into this system, just as I did, unknowingly, you know?
It's so sad. And it's hard, you know, it's hard to talk about because everyone's so, you know, sensitive about their own experience, and so many narratives, you know, exist of the doctor saved me and ultrasound saved me, blah, blah, blah. And so it's very hard to have these kind of, you know, national conversations of saying, hey, question this, because it comes off so self-righteous. And for somebody who has birth trauma or is indebted to the system, you know, and really adamantly, you know, the women who are like, I loved my epidural, I didn't feel a thing, and I loved my scheduled C-section, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just so hard to have these conversations across the board. You know, it's easy to be in our echo chamber because you know all the same stuff I know.
Right.
You know, but whatever. All we can do is keep preaching the truth, and and anyone who's ready to hear it is going to tune in. Yeah, exactly. And our hearts are in a good place, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's amazing to me. Like one of my girls, I don't know, remember which one or how old she was, but years ago, she was like, why is it that they say don't do drugs, and then when you go into labor, do drugs? I'm like,
I mean, they say don't even have soft cheeses in pregnancy. I mean, like the level of ridiculous, you know, they don't have all this stuff, and then the first thing they offer you is morphine.
Yes.
I know, but I just keep falling back on, and what motivates me to keep doing this work and keep having a voice is that women just don't know. They just haven't, you know, nobody knows that they offer you morphine until you go into the hospital in labor. And it's so disorienting. And like you said at the beginning of the show, you know, you didn't even have time to be angry. You were trying to figure out how to breastfeed.
Right.
You know, it's such a vulnerable population to have moms go home, you know, mistreated and not having great births, and most of them don't even know that it can be any better because nobody's told them that. And then they have to figure out how to breastfeed against all odds because their hormonal blueprint has just been completely screwed up. You know, it's just survival mode. And the idea of like filing a lawsuit against a doctor is so unrealistic, especially for people who aren't super rich.
Right.
You know,
right.
I mean, yeah, if I just like had a lawyer on retainer, maybe.
Right.
But
right.
who has that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. But we got to keep just talking about it and living our message.
Right.
And people are drawn to it who are ready to hear it.
That's true. So many people are.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It was super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a wild ride you've been on. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see the birth videos.
Yeah, I'm gonna send those to you.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Have a great day. That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Free Birth Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.